What's up, Wargamers? Welcome back to World of Wargaming. As always, I'm Isaiah, and once again I invite you to pull up a comfy chair, grab a tasty beverage, have a good snack, and let me talk at you for a minute. What I'd like to talk at you about is this game right here, the Rusty Dagger by Rob Salters. Now this is described by the author as a solo adventure zine game. So if you are younger, if you're a younger individual, there used to be these things called magazines. You could buy them in stores. You could subscribe to them. They'd mail them to your house, and they would be about all kinds of things. Below that, as like a subset of the magazine, was the zine, which was a usually independently published periodical, usually specifically related to a certain subculture. So like within the punk community or the skate community or the gaming community, it would be just this small little publication that somebody decided they wanted to make. And usually zines would be a fairly small format. They're usually not huge. So in keeping with that tradition, that's the hero rules. This is the core rules for the game. It's one sheet of paper that it gives you instructions, and you fold it and put a cut down the middle, and then it makes this little tiny book. Now I put these books into a press that I have to flatten them out really, really well, but in between a couple of heavy rule books should do the trick. And that's the whole core rules. Now when you buy the Rusty Dagger from Wargaming, Wargame Vault, or it's on Wargame Vault, it's probably also on Drive-Thru RPG. When you buy the initial one, it comes, or when I bought it may have changed now, but it came with these. The core rules, the hero rules, and Spire of the Golem. It also comes with the character sheet for creating your character. It comes with a leveling chart, the description of what happens at every level for each of the 4 classes that you can choose to be. It comes with a printable tile that you can use to play the game on if you don't have something else, or if you don't want to make or craft something else. And one other thing. And of course it comes for the instructions for how to fold and cut the books. Now, shortly after I bought this, Rob released Den of Rats, and I was not charged for this. So I'm thinking that it may be a situation where once you've bought the initial game, whenever he releases the next little zine, it just immediately you get it, or you get access to it. If that's the case, then good on you, Rob. That's a sweet way to run a system, to run a game. That being said, that's what you're getting. It's like $3, maybe $4. I want to say it was $2.99 when I bought it, but it could have been $3.99, and my brain is just fuzzy. My air conditioner at this point has been broken in the middle of North Carolina for about 2 weeks, and I'm about to lose it, y'all. But my woes are not why you tuned in right now. So let's talk a little bit about what's in each of these little books. So we'll start with the hero rules. This is everything that you need to know for building your character. It begins with an array of points, kind of like a little bit like D&D, where you can either roll your stuff or you can just kind of be generated of some random stats, and then you assign them to your abilities. Each ability, so the abilities are health, combat, knowledge, judgment, and personality. Each of those has 2 subsets that you get to split that up in, which I'll do a separate little quickie video about how to do the character, how to go through that process. So I'm not going to go too deep into that here. And then at the end of it, those stats, in addition to 2d6, are what you roll for checks or combat or whatever. Your enemies will usually have a set die type, so one of the main polyhedral dice, a d4, a d6, a d8, a d10, a d12. There may be some that eventually have a d20, but as of right now, I don't think there's anybody quite that gnarly walking around the universe. Once you've assigned your stats, you move on to picking your class, and then it gives you the kind of the synopsis of how you level up and how to revive people. And then on the back of it, you got an inventory list of the things that you can buy when you start off. I am going to buy the pet wolf, because why wouldn't I? Once you got your character built, it's time to play the game. Drop the book. Okay, I got the book back. So to play this game, You're obviously going to need the rules. You will also need a 6x10 board. This is the play size of the game. It's like a micro adventure game. It's really, really interesting. It plays really, really cool. It's kind of like you're exploring, instead of laying out the whole dungeon at a time, you're kind of laying out a single room or a single encounter within the delve or the module at a time, which I think is really, really cool because it's not very taxing on model count or terrain count or space that you need to play. Even like this is it, and some room to roll dice and keep your papers or whatever, and that's plenty of room. And then of course you need at least 2d6 for yourself and your companions, and you need a pretty much full set of polyhedral dice, which are your standard issue D&D dice. Don't buy them from Amazon. Go to your local FLGS and buy those dice, unless of course you are not fortunate enough to have a local FLGS. So once you've got all that stuff assembled, models, everything else, the first step to playing the game is to set up what he calls the initiative bag. And this is a chit system, very, very similar to Bolt Action or Cruel Seas or Warlords of Erewhon or Antares. Any of those kind of Warlords games, it's very, very similar. You start with 3 chits for each side in the bag, and then you just draw them randomly, and you can gain advantage, and you get an extra one of your chits in the bag, or you can get disadvantage, and the enemy gets an extra chit in the bag. It's a fun system, and it's on such a small scale. You know, it's fun to pull stuff out of the bag. It's fun to not know what's going to happen next. It's nice to have that agency taken away. I'm a big fan of those types of initiative systems. Once you've got the bag set up and you're ready to get into your module, whether that at the moment be Spire of the Golem or Den of Rats, there are 2 types of encounters in the game. There are narrative encounters, which are things like trying to convince a companion to join your party, or dodging a trap, or searching a room for something. And for those, you don't even really need to set up the board. It gives you a little paragraph of fluff, which is a nice inclusion because it helps, you know, it is a narrative game. It's an adventure game. So we want that little bit of story to drive us. And you just kind of go from there. You roll your dice. If you pass, it tells you what to do. If you fail, it tells you what to do. And then you come into a combat challenge, which is where you're setting up your 6x10 board, deploying everything out, and getting into the wet work. Now, I believe that I neglected to mention this earlier, but you do need some small pieces of scatter terrain. I don't think you need anything huge at all, and you could easily do it have it marked with tokens or paper cutouts or whatever. I've been using some very small kind of 3D printed stuff that I have, like tables, chairs, bunches of barrels, crates, things like that. And then also some torture devices and just random little pieces of scatter terrain that you have. You know, anything that goes from about 1 inch by 1 inch up to about 4 inches by 4 inches is about the max size. And you need something to mark potentially hindering or dangerous types of terrain like ground with. But that can, again, easily just be a colored token or some colored squares on your battle map. When you activate a hero, you get 2 actions, but you can't do the same action twice. So you can't move, or attack. So in some situations, it's going to leave you taking just a single action, which is fine. Which brings me to the one thing about the game that I don't love, and that's that instead of just giving like movement as X spaces on a profile, he used letters, so C for crawl, S for slow, N for normal, or F for fast, which once I realized what I was looking at and remembered to bounce between the books and found it's not a big deal. It's just one thing that, for me, I'll forget that stuff. So it just means I have to keep flipping pages. But luckily, you know, there's only 4 pages. So it's not like I have to search through a giant rule book for it. It is just one thing that I don't love. I would rather have a number. Attacking or any kind of check, really, you're rolling your 2d6 and adding modifiers that you get based on your stats and looking to hit a target number. And that's combat. That's pretty much the whole system. It's very, very, very simple, very, very straightforward. And I haven't played through the whole of the first module yet. I've played through the first narrative and the first combat scenario of that 3 or 4 times now, just to get a better feel for it. But I haven't played through all of it because I want that first playthrough as much as possible, to be for y'all to get to see it so that you can get, you know, my honest reactions to what's happening as I go through this dungeon. When you got your board, let me pick mine back up. So when you've got your board, movement is always orthogonal. It's just left, right, up, down. Same with attacking. There's no attacking along the diagonals, which is fine. I'm neither for or against that. It's just the mechanic. That's how it's designed, and it works because it is such a small space. I think that if you could do diagonal movements, I think it might actually give you too much freedom. With only being able to go left, right, up, down, it forces you to have to focus and think a little bit more about the movement, which in a game that's already very, very small is another small, nice little kind of added layer of crunch between the cake and frosting that is the rest of the game. Once you've drawn through all the initiative chits that are in the bag, you have an interlude phase where you're checking in-game conditions. Are there enemies left on the table? If you had a task, is the task completed? Or are there any special rules that says the game ends once X is accomplished, or X happens, or X turns, or whatever may happen? Like I said, I haven't read too far ahead with this because I want to get a good first playthrough. And if that's the case, if any of those things have been done, you end the combat challenge. If they have not been done, then you just dump the chits back in the bag and keep rolling. Now, with that, any advantage or disadvantage that you have gained up to that combat challenge is removed after that challenge, after your next combat challenge from when you got it. And then the bag will be reset to 3 tokens for each side. And on the very back is the enemy activation list, what the bad guys should do. And it's all pretty straightforward. You know, if they've got a melee weapon, they're going to hit somebody. If they got a ranged weapon, they're going to shoot somebody. If they don't, then they're going to move to try to get to where they can do those things. Which brings us to the 2 current installments or issues of the zine, which are out. The 2 current scenarios, which are Spire of the Golem, the first one, and Den of Rats. And I think the modules are my favorite piece of this. I love this little kind of neat format. It's super, I don't know, it just makes me happy to hold it in my hands. I do kind of wish it would have been dope if maybe the heroes and the core rules could have been in one book, but with the way the paper folds, I understand why they can't. But I love it in this. In the modules, this just feels so freaking cool in my hands to have this whole little adventure module fold out like this. The writing is pretty solid. It creates a good setup for immersion to, you know, get into the game and into the scenario. I'm a fan of it. The monster, it gives you your stat boxes for your monsters. Very plain, very easy to read. And it just, you know, but you get to the back cover and you're done and you figure out what your XP was. I haven't looked inside of the Den of Rats ones at all, other than to look at what the monster list looked like to see if there was anything that I needed to purchase or print to be able to play it. And there wasn't. I have pretty much everything that I need for that, so that's freaking sweet. So all in all, at the end of the day, for $3, this game is a really solid buy, especially if you already enjoy games like Rangers of Shadow Deep or the Silver Bayonet or 5 Leagues from the Borderlands / the 5 Leagues franchise. Or if you like solo gaming already, especially if you're into the genre of fantasy solo gaming, this game is a no-brainer because you already have everything you need. You might not have exactly what you need, but guaranteed you have the models. It's like if you played Rangers, I know that you have the models because that's a lot of the reason why I have them. And if you don't, you'll have easy substitutions. So, end of the day, I think this is a solid purchase. I'm very happy that I bought it. I'm very happy to play through the scenarios, and I'm very excited to see what future scenarios Rob is going to come out with. So that, my friends, is going to do it for today. I tried to keep this one a little bit quick because, again, it is scorching in the part of my house where all of this, you know, where all the magic happens. So I'm trying to be informative and at least hopefully mildly entertaining and to not have a heat stroke. But that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for letting me talk at you for a minute. If you are at all interested in the Rusty Dagger from Rob Salters, check out the link down in the description. It is available for purchase as a PDF on Wargame Vault and most likely on Drive-Thru RPG. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, may the dice gods be ever in your favor. And as always, I'd like to say a big, huge, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to our patrons who support us and pledge to us over on Patreon. You guys are the absolute best. If you enjoyed the content you saw here today and that's something that you would like to consider doing to help out the channel, go over there, check out the link in the description, check out the Patreon. There's a lot of cool stuff over there, including access to our Discord server, talk to me, hang out with me, talk about our work, what we got going on in the hobby, some shout outs, all kinds of cool stuff. Check it out if that's something that you think you would be into. And regardless of whether or not you do that, I want you to know that I am incredibly grateful that you decided to stop by and spend part of your day with me today, rolling dice and pushing toy soldiers around. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And as always, may the dice be ever in your favor.